Good morning. So great to see everybody out. You might go ahead and get your Bibles and turn to Proverbs if you would like to follow through as we go through this lesson today. I have put the verses that we'll be looking up on the board for your convenience so you can get your notepad out and write them down. A couple of weeks ago we issued a challenge here at Liberty, and the challenge was to take the Proverbs challenge. We give out this particular sheet of paper. There's some in the back if you wasn't here then to get it or hadn't got your copy yet. And what the challenge is to read the Proverbs in a month. There's 31 chapters in Proverbs. There's more or less 31 days in a month. But just start at one chapter, chapter 1, and then as you read that chapter, when you complete that chapter, pick a verse, a proverb out of the chapter. And then say to yourself in that, what in the world does this mean? What have I learned? And that's what you'll write. You'll see chapter 1, you read it, and then you put your verse right there. And then you write in here, what have I learned from that verse? I've already begun mine, of course, and many of you have begun yours, and already got mine down to chapter 15. We did this a couple of weeks ago, and you don't have to, if you say, well, I hadn't really got started on that yet, you can start now. You can start today. But you pick your verse out, and it's tough to pick the verse out. Sometimes you look at it, you say, I need to work on that. You read a few Proverbs later, you say, well, I really need to work on that one. But after you hone down and say, well, this is the one that I'm really going to work on, then you might put on there, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do about that? I learned that I should be this, or I should not be doing this, and this is what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do this, that, or the other. And if you do that, if you'll take this challenge at the end of 31 days, you'll be better. And we want to get better. We want to grow. We want to go from where we are to where we need to be. We'll talk about that tonight. Come back at 6 o'clock tonight, and we're going to address the issue, how do we get from where we are to where we need to be? And Proverbs, of course, is just one of those things that we can do to help us on that growth to get better. What is a proverb? A proverb, as we've already noted, is a short, wise saying that effectively expresses a truth or a useful thought. And the Proverbs, of course, if you've been reading through it, you know that here's a verse and it's just a short, but it's a wise saying. And the way he says it, it effectively expresses that truth that I need to put into my life, or that useful thought that I can change my life to get better. And we looked at the first week, the word wisdom. Of course, you can't really talk about Proverbs without talking about Solomon, who wrote most of the Proverbs. And these are inspired by God. These are not just the ancient Chinese Proverbs. Of course, there are those short, wise sayings that expresses effectively a useful thought or a wise truth. But we're talking about the inspiration from God that He gave to Solomon. And most of the Proverbs are written by Solomon. And as we read these, we think, well, what are we got? Well, we've got to look at the wisdom that Solomon gave in these that's inspired by God. And we looked at the word wisdom, and we looked at why it's important, it's imperative for us to go out through our lives and be wise, to exercise discretion, to exercise good judgment. And then the next week, last week, we talked about the words. Words. Wisdom the first week, words the second week. And we read through the Proverbs, picked out some short, wise sayings that expressly, effectively gave this truth about words. We talked about when we should zip it, keep our mouth shut. We talked about when we should open it. And then we talked about what we should be saying. And so we talked about words, our words, and how important they are. And how we should use those words wisely to help us, help others. Today's word that we're going to look at in our lesson through Proverbs is wealth. Solomon was probably the wealthiest man of his day. Very wealthy. Maybe even could be argued that he was the wealthiest man of all time. Solomon was genuinely wealthy. And he said, well, as I go through these Proverbs, and I look and I see a proverb over here that talks about the tongue, and then right underneath it, there's a proverb that talks about wealth. Well, I'll just forget about wealth because I'm not rich. I'm not rich. I don't need to deal with wealth. I'll just deal with my tongue. I'll pick that verse. I won't pick the verse about wealth. I don't need it because I'm a poor man. Folks, everyone in this building is genuinely wealthy. If you compared our means, our sustenances, our resources with that of the world globally, we talk about in our country, the 99% and the 1%. The 1% that's wealthy, the 1%, we really need to get that 1%'s money and give it all these 99%, which we make up. But if you stop and think about it globally, we are the 1%. We are the 1%. There are folks in this world that are making less than $2 a day. I suspect that I can go in and say, okay, give me $2 out of your pocket. Every one of you can do that. If you can't do that, you probably got a debit card or a credit card, or you probably asked your mother for it. You've got access to $2. But there are folks in this world that doesn't have access to $2. They'd have to go out and work an entire day just to get $2. Folks, we are rich. We are wealthy. And that's today's word, is wealth. And we could talk about, there's lots of things that Solomon has to say about wealth. You that are reading through and are taking the Proverbs challenge, you've already seen some things about wealth and how to manage your wealth, how to deal with your wealth. We're not really going to go into it about management of your money and resources. We're all wealthy, but we don't all manage our wealth wisely. We should. And Proverbs, Solomon gives us much to say about how to manage our wealth wisely. But what we're going to be talking about in consideration of our wealth is our attitude about our wealth. In the prayer right before we gave, the prayer leader said, God, keep us humble in spirit and be pleased with our giving. Here was this point. God, we're wealthy. We got the means. We've got the resources. We've got the wealth. But what we need is to be humble in our spirit, and that God would be pleased with the way we give or handle our wealth that He gives us. Anyway, it's all His anyway. So what we're going to be talking about in relationship to wealth is how we use our wealth, our resources, to serve and care for others. And it's all about attitude. It's all about that humble spirit. The first thing we're going to look at is this, young people. Have you ever seen that attitude, moms and dads? If you've got more than one kid, I know you've seen it. And if you've got one kid and they've got a neighbor, I know you've seen it. That's the problem. Abraham Lincoln, I think it was said, his two children, his two boys were arguing just ferociously. Somebody come up and says, Mr. Lincoln, what's wrong with your two boys? He said, it's what's wrong with the world. He said, each of these two boys want 2 walnuts and I've got 3. They always want more. We want more. And the word to learn about our wealth is don't be selfish. We are wealthy. You've got means, you've got resources. You've got a place to lay your head tonight, and you got lunch waiting on you when we get finished from here. You are wealthy. But the attitude toward that wealth is don't be selfish. Proverbs chapter 21, verse number 17 says, he that loves pleasure, that means that's what I want. I love it. I live for it. He that loves pleasure shall be a poor man. If you're living for self-gratification, a lot of our folks in America lives for instant gratification. I want it, and I want it when, class? Now. I don't want to save for it. I don't want to put back for it. I want it, and I want it right now. Best thing that ever happened to me in my financial life is years and years and years ago, we wanted a bedroom suit. And I thought, it'd be great to have this bedroom suit. Now, I had no money, had no savings. I didn't even have a quarter in my pocket. And I went to the furniture company and I said, I want that bedroom, but I'll pay my bills now. Every month I'll pay my bills. If I have to go without something to eat, I'll pay my bills. So I walked up and I filled out the application and I told the guy and I said, I want to buy this bedroom suit. He looked at me and he said, I'm not loaning you the money for this bedroom suit. You can't have this bedroom suit. It hurt my feelings. I said, what do you mean? You don't trust me? I'll pay you. I promise you I'll pay you. And I paid all of my debts and I will pay you. But he said, you can't afford it. You don't have enough money coming in with what money you got going out. But I wanted that bedroom suit and I wanted that bedroom suit now. But I can afford it. And he did me a favor by declining my credit. He said no. And a few months later, I thank God that he said no, because I couldn't afford it, but I wanted it. But we have that spirit of selfishness. I want it, and I want it now. We've got to get rid of that attitude. If I love pleasure, I'm going to be a poor man. And that's true. He that loves wine and oil shall not be rich. If all you want is instant gratification, and I want what I want, and I want it now, your attitude toward your wealth is not a good attitude. It's a selfish attitude. The next spirit is be merciful. If we have wealth, and we do, then when we look at someone that's in need, be merciful. Proverbs says in Proverbs 3:3, let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Don't let it forsake thee. Be merciful. Bind them around your neck. That means keep the spirit of mercy all in your mind and in your heart and in front of you. Write them upon the table of your heart. Stamp it in your heart, so that when you see someone that needs some help, immediately you're invoked to feel mercy. Have it all near you and close by you. Proverbs 12:10 says, a righteous man even regards the life of his animals. You know, he can show mercy to anyone and all, even his animals he shows mercy to. But the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. The idea of the tender mercy is even the most compassionate act of a wicked man is cruel. When you see a wicked man who is cruel, even his most compassionate act is a cruel act. Don't be a wicked man. Be a merciful man, a righteous man. 19 verse 17, he that hath pity, that's mercy, upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord. If you give to somebody, you're actually giving to God. Is that not what Jesus is going to judge us by? Well, on Judgment Day, He said, I was poor, I was naked, I was hungry, I was in prison, I was in all this other stuff, and you didn't help me. Or, you did help me. You helped them, the least of these my brothers, you helped me. So He said, that's what you're doing. When you have pity and you express the spirit of humble mercy, He said, you're actually expressing that to God. And that which He giveth, He will pay him again. Jesus put it this way, give, and it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over. That's a true principle. That's an actual true principle. If you give to someone, it will come back. Someone told me here that if you cast your bread upon water, it will come back a sandwich. Is that not a good principle? It comes back to you in much more. God will take care of you. Now, we should not use this principle and abuse it and think God is some kind of stockbroker or banker that pays you interest. You know, don't look at it like that. But look at it in the fact that if you express mercy to folks, you're actually dealing with God on that subject. Proverbs 21:13 says, whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor. Oh, they're crying, they want something, they need something. I'm going to stop my ears up. I'm going to close I'm not going to listen. That person also shall cry himself. He's going to get in the spot one day, and he's going to need something. And he's going to reach out and call out and cry out for need. But he shall not be heard. God's He'll not bless him. So how we treat the poor is how God treats us oftentimes. That's a principle. Here's another principle. Be generous. Yes, I'm merciful, and boy, it breaks my heart to see that person in that shape. But when I give, be generous in helping that individual. Proverbs 3:28 says, say not unto your neighbor, go away, neighbor, go somewhere. Come back tomorrow. Go away today, but come back tomorrow. Don't do that. When thou hast it by thee. I've got $5 in my pocket. My neighbor needs a sandwich. Don't say to my neighbor, look, go back and I'll buy you lunch tomorrow. Don't do that when you've got it in your pocket. That's the idea of generosity. I want to help when I can help. In Proverbs 11 verse 24, there is that scattereth. There are those folks that scattereth. They just give and give and give and give. And yet, they increase. You think, well, how in the world can they increase when they're giving? He says, and there is that withholds more than is meet. Now, we should save. We should withhold. We should use discretion and good judgment and wisdom to put back and hold back and not give it to everybody. Let me tell you, if somebody comes up and they say, give me $10 because I want to get a sandwich, and all the while they've got an empty beer bottle in their hand wanting to fill it up. You know, be a little bit wise there. Be a little bit, use discretion there and say, well, you know, let's go to the restaurant and I'll buy you a meal. Don't just give them the cash. What's am I going to do? So there are logical times that we need to withhold what is meet, what is reasonable. But if we hold more than is reasonable, it's reasonable to give this guy some money. It's reasonable to give this guy a sandwich. It's reasonable to give this guy what they need. But that tends to poverty. There's those that scatters and gives, but yet they tend to increase. But then there's those that are so stingy that they hold back more than is reasonable, and they tend to poverty. What did Jesus say? Give, and it'll be given unto you. But if you withhold, Proverbs 28 verse 27 says, he that gives unto the poor shall not lack. You'll have what you need. But he that hides his eyes shall have many a curse. That's what Proverbs says. And he's a rich man. And he knows. He has been inspired by God to tell us these things. Proverbs 31:20 says, of course you know Proverbs 31 is the virtuous woman. And that virtuous woman, what does she do? She stretches out her hand to the poor. She's generous. She's generous. Yea, she reaches forth her hands to the needy. She helps people. She's not only merciful, she's actually generous in her mercies and her attitude about mercy. What's wrong with that picture, young people? This is a balance. That means things on this side, young people probably don't know what that is. Let me explain to you what this is. This is a balance. Things on this side is supposed to weigh the same as things on this side. It's just. It's perfect. Well, somebody puts a man holding up a big elephant and puts a mouse on the other side, and yet the man said, see, all are evenly balanced. In other words, this right here weighs the same as that right there. That's a lie. That is not being very fair. What happens is people will come up and they'll put weight on this side and they'll put grain on this side, and when the grain matches the weight, I want 5 pounds of wheat. Okay, let me put a 5-pound weight over here, and I'll put my wheat over here until it reaches 5 pounds, until it equals. And then therefore I know that you have exactly 5 pounds of wheat. But there are those that are not fair. They want to cheat. They want to put a 5-pound weight on this side of the scale, but it really doesn't weigh 5 pounds. It only weighs 3 pounds. It's just got 5 pounds written on it. And then they put the wheat over here, and then it balances out. And so, oh, there it is. We've got it all fixed. You've got 5 pounds. No, you don't. You just got 3 pounds. I'm cheating. Or they fix this balance right here. They fix this scale to where the 5 pounds don't equal 5 pounds. They cheat. They're not fair. Proverbs 11 verse 1 says, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. People who cheat others, God looks at that as an abomination. But a just weight, it's right, it's correct. That's His delight. God loves it when we treat people fairly. But He sure hates it. It's an abomination when we cheat people out of stuff. Proverbs 16:11 says, a just weight and balance are the Lord's. The Lord looks at that. All the weights of the bag are His work. What does that mean? It means God is concerned about all of our weights, all of our transactions, all of our dealings. God is concerned about it. It's His business. It's His work. He watches that. And He says, hey, is David Conley cheating people, or is David Conley fair with people? If he's cheating people, David is an abomination to me. If he's treating people fair, David is a delight to me. That's what that is saying. It's God's business. Proverbs 22 verse 8 says, remove not the ancient landmark, which thy fathers have set. That goes back to deeds and property lines. And Proverbs says, now look, if this guy owns this much property, and there's the property line right there, don't go and move it and say, that's not your land anymore. That's my neighbor's land. That's my land. I'm your neighbor and I want your land, and I'm going to move the landmark. I'm going to move the property line. God says, don't do that. That's not fair. That's cheating people. He says, remove not the old landmark and enter not into the fields of the fatherless. There are poor people out there that are fatherless. They're orphans. And yet they have some fields that they're making their living on. And there are rich people out there that want to come in and take the poor people's fields away from them by unjust and unfair practices. God says that's abominable to me. Proverbs 13:11 says, wealth that is gotten by vanity. The word vanity there means by dishonesty, by cheating. Wealth that is gotten by cheating shall be diminished. It will not last. But he that gathereth, that means he works by labor. He gets his wealth by working for it. It shall increase. God will bless that. It's all about respect, folks. It's respecting your neighbor. It's even respecting your enemy. Here's what Proverbs says in verse 25, verse 17. Chapter 25, verse 17. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. Let that sink in a minute. Stay out of your neighbor is someone you love. That's your friend. That's the person that you get along with. Stay out of your neighbor's house, lest they get tired of you coming over. Now, that's not necessarily talking just about going and visit someone. If you care about someone and they're sick, you want to go visit them and you want to say, how you doing? You want to give them some soup. Here's the deeper meaning. Stay out of your neighbor's business, because it's none of your business. Now, if they have need, then certainly help them. We've talked about being generous and being merciful and all that. But be respectful. Use the idea of wealth. People want to know, how much do you make? How much taxes did you pay? How did you afford that car? It's none of your business. You know, stay out of your neighbor's business. Be respectful of your neighbor. But also, on the other side of that, be respectful of your enemy. Proverbs 25, verses 21 and 22 says, if your enemy is hungry, if your enemy needs something, give him some bread to eat. If he's thirsty, give him some water to drink. For thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward you. Don't say, oh, well, I'm going to worry my enemy by helping him when he don't deserve it. I'm going to make him mad. That's not the idea. The idea is help your enemy. Help the person that's talking bad behind your back when they need help. And what you will do is you'll invoke them to be ashamed of themselves. Here they were mean to you. They were ugly to you. But yet you helped them. Maybe that'll make them ashamed. Maybe that'll make them want to study that they shouldn't have been mean to you. And they'll change their heart. That's the spirit of this verse. It's not to get even with your enemy and throw a lot of hot coals on his head. No, it's to break his heart. It's to help him to see that he shouldn't be mean. He shouldn't be ugly. Here's the point. Use our wealth with our neighbors wisely, and use our wealth with our enemies wisely. Bottom line, final point, it's all about love. Love. If we have a spirit of love, then we'll handle our wealth properly. Proverbs 10:12 says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sin. It takes care of things. If you hate somebody, you'll always disagree with them and strive with them over every little thing. If you love somebody, you let things go. And you know you do. You do it all the time. Somebody you don't like, you'll pick on them about every little thing. Somebody you love dearly, it's okay, I'll let that go. Love is the bottom line. It says, Proverbs 15:17, better, it's better to have a dinner of herbs where love is. Dinner of herbs is vegetables. It's better to have just plain vegetables where there's love than it is to have a stalled ox and hatred therewith. A stalled ox is the fatted calf. You put the ox in the stall and it gets fat. I would much rather have beans and rice and have a love in my family than have steak and potatoes and all the trimmings and have hatred in the family. It's better, in chapter 18, verse 24, a man that hath friends must show himself to be friendly. If you want to see love in your life, then you've got to express love in your life. And there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. A brother sticks close, that's true, but there's a friend that will stick closer if you develop love. Love is the key. The reason that we are sharing these wise, short, wise, effectively expressed sayings that are so true and so useful is to help us to get better. And that's why every single Sunday morning and Sunday night and Wednesday night we put on the board this: God's plan of salvation. We want you to get better not only physically in this world, which you will if you apply God's principles, but there's going to be a day that we're going to stand before God in judgment. And if we didn't have that humble, merciful, generous, loving, respectful spirit on this earth, then we're going to be judged according to that. And if we do not humble ourselves to the point that we will believe the Word of God, we're never going to be saved. If we do not humble ourselves to the point that we're ashamed of ourselves and repent, and we do not confess that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God because we are too full of pride and refuse to believe, we'll be judged on that. So, well, I'm not going to be baptized, even though the Bible clearly says that you got to be baptized to be saved. The Bible clearly says that, but I'm not going to do that because I don't have the spirit of humility and humbleness. We'll be judged based on that. It's not only what we do with the wealth in our pocketbooks. It's what are we doing with the wealth of our soul. If a man shall gain the entire world but lose his own soul, it's a tragedy. It's so awful. Your greatest possession is your soul. What are you doing with your soul? How are you handling that wealth? If you need to come forward to be baptized for the remission of your sins, today's the day. Don't walk out of here too proud to not do this. If you need to come forward and say, you know what? Upon reading the Proverbs, I saw some things in it that was a mirror to my soul. And there's some things I should have done and changed. And I brought a shame and reproach on the church. I just want to confess that. Or I just want to ask the church to help me to get through this and pray for me because I'm going through some hard times in my life. Today's your day. You just come forward and we'll pray for you. What are you doing with the wealth of your soul? Why don't you come? While together we stand and sing.